social distance.
All right, thanks very much, and welcome everyone to the Tuesday, July 14th Sewage Commission meeting. I'll start by recognizing that we are on the unceded territories of the Comox First Nation, and we'll roll right into number C, management report for receipt. That was moved and seconded, and are there any questions or comments on the management report? And I don't see any hands going up online in the Zoom meeting, none here. So I'll assume if no one speaks up that we all will vote in favor of receiving this. So all in favor, or any opposed, I should ask. And not seeing any, that's received unanimously. And we'll move on to section D, reports. And number one, the Sewage Management Advisory Committee minutes for receipt. And are there any questions or comments regarding those? I'll pass it over to staff, it looks like.
Yeah, sorry, this is sewage management.
You're a little ahead of yourself.
I'm a little ahead of myself.
No problem. And if there are no questions or comments, I'll call to see if there's anyone opposed to receipt. And I don't see anyone speaking up, so that's received unanimously. And moving on to item number 2, the Comox Valley Sewerage System Liquid Waste Management Plan Consultant Update. Thanks very much, and we'll pass this one to staff.
Thank you very much, Chair and Commissioners. And Chris LaRose is here and will present this report and answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Russell. Good afternoon, everyone. So as committed to the Commission earlier this year in April, I believe, when the LWMP consultation was put on hold due to the COVID pandemic, this report summarizes our proposed consultation approach this fall to support a recommended preferred conveyance solution to the Commission in November. Despite all that's transpired since then, the approach in front of you is almost identical to what was previously planned for to take place in April and May, leading to a recommendation in June. Current state of the COVID crisis in BC, we're hopeful that the open houses planned for late September will actually be able to proceed in some form in person, but regardless, if not, we'll deliver them virtually if the situation deteriorates. Tailored invitations to Area B residents will go out, particularly those along the possible pipeline routes. So there'll be tailored invitations to attend the open houses, similarly to how we will invite businesses and residents along the route through the town of Comox as well. We did recently send a letter out to the residents in Area B to let them know that there was geotechnical work happening in the area. And that communication and the work itself did stir up a little bit of interest and concern from residents in the area. And certainly as we progress through the process, we're expecting even more scrutiny and participation in the consultative process. But we feel that the geotech and hydrological work that we are in the process of completing will set us up well to be able to respond and address those concerns. That's all I have for now, but I'm happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And I'll pass it straight over to Director Grant.
Thank you. Yeah, so you guys were out and drilled some test holes, mainly down Moreland Road, and I think some of those other places. And so I've received a few calls on that, as have I know a couple of our counselors. And what I've told them is to just send them on to you, that these are just tests. Of course, they're worried about how deep, where's it going to go, what's it going to do to my well. Those are the basic questions. So I've just passed them along to you. Is that the correct response?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, please pass them on to me. Thanks, Director. Sure. So thank you.
Great. And regarding the open houses, sorry if I didn't notice how many there were going to be, you would hope, and where they might end up being held.
Yeah, so our format to date has been one for each of the primary communities, so one in Courtenay and one in Comox. They'll take place towards the end of September, early October. And the last one, depending on how the situation unfolds, we've used the golf course, the clubhouse at the course in Comox. And where did we go in Courtney? The Native Sons Hall, I believe.
So bigger, a little bit bigger events.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see, are there any other, oh yeah, here we go. Director Swift.
Thanks. Chris, my question is around the liquid waste management plan group that's been meeting. What's the plan for that meeting? I know there was one at the end of September and then again in October. If we're still under these kinds of restrictions, will the meetings go ahead? Yeah, I guess in some format, regardless of what we're up to here with COVID.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. There's two TAC PAC meetings planned, with the public events anticipated to take place between those two, so that we can input the feedback received. So that the public open houses are kind of the last step in a 6-week process, and so I think we've allowed ourselves a week after that public event to kind of bundle up all the feedback received, and then we can input it into the TAC PAC, the second TAC PAC meeting, so that when they do make their final recommendation for a conveyance solution, they do so with the results of that public process. As far as the format of the TAC PAC meetings, we're hoping to have them in person, in a meeting in a room like this. But if the circumstances don't allow that, then we're ready to deliver it via Zoom. Yeah, and we think that could be almost as effective.
So you're not foreseeing them being delayed again?
No, definitely not. Yeah, no, we're very intent on maintaining this schedule and not seeing any further delay. So we're definitely developing contingency plans. So if we feel that it would be more effective to do it in a virtual way, then we'll have some practice by then for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for working so hard to keep it on track, despite the fairly substantial changes in how we meet. I don't see any other questions or comments from the commission. So on receipt, is there anyone opposed? And not seeing any, that's received unanimously. And we do have a recommendation that the Comox Valley Sewage Commission approve the sewage system liquid waste management planning public consultation plan as attached to the July 9th, 2020 staff report. And that's
I'll move the recommendation.
okay. Thanks so much. Yeah. So we'll give that one to Director Morin and a second from Director Cole-Hamilton. And do you have a question or comment on that? I noticed your mic's on.
No, I was just turning it on.
Okay, that's good. That's right. Okay, well, I don't see any questions or comments. So actually, I'll do a roll call on this one. So calling the question, Director Morin,
In favor.
Director Grant,
In favor.
Director Cole-Hamilton,
In favor?
Director Swift,
In favor?
and Commissioner Lieutenant Colonel Gerard.
In favor.
And I'm also in favor. I hope I didn't miss anyone on the commission. All right, next up we have the, let me see, that was that one. We have number 3, the electoral area A connection to the Comox Valley Sewage System sewer expansion bylaw for receipt,
Move receipt.
and seconded by Director Swift. And I'll pass this one over to staff if that's appropriate.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair and Commissioners. And Chris Rose will give a brief summary and answer any of your questions.
Thanks, Russell. So in May, the Sewage Commission reported on the resolution from the February 11th meeting, which to allow the decision to allow the conveyance of wastewater from portions of Area A into the Comox Valley Sewage System. So a portion of that resolution directed staff to present or develop a non-regulatory bylaw to guide the future decision processes for system expansion. So attached as Appendix A to this staff report is the draft bylaw for your consideration. So the purpose of the bylaw is not regulatory, but rather to confirm the commitment to extend sewer services south, to outline the criteria that will use to ensure fairness to member municipalities and the existing ratepayers, to outline the principles around the decision, and identify the steps and components involved in implementing the decision. So the Sewage Commission could pass a motion bringing this bylaw through the first readings today or send it back to staff for modifications. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thanks, Chris. And having read the bylaws, we're actually quite impressed at how easy it was to understand, which isn't always the case with bylaws. So I appreciate that. And it also does outline some very specific steps, like you mentioned, and outlined what's important to us. So definitely appreciate that. I did have a question about potential timelines for working through this process. If we're, and maybe you don't know exactly, but are we looking at years? Are we looking at months? What are your thoughts on it? What might help drive that process in general?
I guess there's a number of pieces to this puzzle. It could be done in as little as months, but I think there's one of those pieces, of course, is the KFN's treaty process. And the various other partners, such as the Area A, and including a potential set process in Royston. So I would say, I'm speaking for James today as he's led this piece, but
Lucky you.
yeah, I would say early next year, likely at the earliest, and potentially longer depending on on
So
how it
this
transpires.
is, as you mentioned, this is the groundwork, and we're sort of waiting to see how our partners do and with their processes and development and all the rest.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks. Are there any other questions or comments on the bylaw? I don't actually see any hands up, so you guys probably did a great job. So on receipt, is anyone opposed to receipt? Not seeing any, that's unanimous. And we do have a recommendation that the bylaw 617, which is the sewage service expansion principle bylaw, be considered for readings today.
I'll move the recommendation.
And that was seconded by Director Grant. And are there any questions or comments at this point? And this is going to first and second reading, is that correct? And third? Okay. Good to know. And that's going to the board meeting later. Excellent, thanks. So I'll do a roll call on the question. Director Morin?
In favor.
Director Grant?
In favor.
Director Cole Hamilton?
In favor?
Director Swift?
In favor?
And Commissioner Lieutenant Colonel Gerard?
In favor.
And I'm also in favor, so that's unanimous. Thanks very much. And we'll move on to new business, which is the use of Skyrocket for municipal landscaping. And we'll have someone move receipt on
Move
this.
receipt.
Second?
Thanks very much. And so I had a quick chat with Director Hamir earlier today just to confirm her intentions. And as the letter states, I think currently our municipalities are able to use the compost from food waste for free, and I believe they're doing so. She's suggesting that we encourage our municipalities to use the Skyrocket material, which is compost from sewage, I believe, for ornamental gardens and save the other stuff for growing food or other uses. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Chair Frisch, you're fading out on me. I lost the tail end of what you said there. Thank you.
So what was the last thing you heard?
Well, I heard the part about your conversation with Director Hamir, and yeah, I mean, I've heard the first part, so.
Yeah, so we're just contemplating if we want to encourage the municipalities to use the Skyrocket material for ornamental gardens, as opposed to using the compost waste from food, from kitchens and such, for ornamental, and save it for growing food or gardens.
Right, thank you.
Sorry, go ahead. Did you have a comment as well?
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll pass it over to Director Swift.
Thank you. In speaking with our parks manager, he's new, so he hasn't seen the use of Skyrocket. But in speaking to our staff, they're much happier with the organic compost. And he had a couple of concerns. A few of them are, occasionally we are using the products for fruit trees and vegetables. And then secondly, he was just wondering what kind of testing there is for skyrocket, and his concern was around use around creeks and streams, and if there's any hazard there. So he would prefer to continue the use of the organics rather than go to the skyrocket. So that's, and I'm just wondering about the testing of the skyrocket, and is it safe for
For trees
around,
and
well, it's, I don't believe it is safe for vegetables and fruit trees, but I'm wondering around streams.
okay, well, valid concerns. And I don't, do we have anyone on staff today that might be interested? There you go. Oh, one of you has to turn your mic off just to give,
There we go. Actually, this relates to just a comment that I was looking to make in response to the suggestion, and that is that the Skyrocket product is a Class A compost, which means it is suitable for all uses, including on vegetable crops and fruit trees. So I just wanted to raise a caution that our communications with respect to Skyrocket have been open in terms of its available use, and we do know that there are members of the public that use it on their vegetable gardens and as a Class A compost to meet that criteria. And maybe I'll ask Mike who's on the line, Mike Emery, our manager of wastewater services. He can go into a higher level of detail about the level of testing, but there is a rigorous bar set under the provincial organic matter recycling regulation that governs composting that we need in order to be declared a Class A compost for that product. So that was one of our unintentionally that the Skyrocket product is not suitable for ornamental plants and trees.
yeah, that's good information. And would we like to follow up with Mike Emery? Just maybe I have a quick question about the process it goes through. Is it similar, the process that our sewage waste goes through versus the kitchen waste?
So I can go ahead, I guess?
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. Well, compost is rated as different classes overall through the organic matter recycling regulation. And Class A, of course, is the highest rating that you can have for organic compost or any kind of compost. And that's determined by the different metals and coliform levels in your compost to ensure that it's either Class A or Class B. Through history, there's always been a mix-up with people. It's never really brought up through the media. People hear about Class A biosolids or Class B biosolids, and that's a different product again that's regulated through the Ministry of Environment, and that's when you would just take biosolids themselves that haven't been composted and apply them to land. So what we do is we take our biosolids and we run them through the composting process, which is it uses microorganisms and heat to stabilize any fecal coliform or salmonella or E. coli. And then you have to go through some stringent testing, and you're to be negative for salmonella and less than 20 mpm for coliform and negative for E. coli before it can even become a Class A product. So in other words, there's no microbiological hazard or worry of that kind of contamination with the Class A compost. And as well, any heavy metals or anything like that has to be below the guidelines for it to become a Class A compost. So
That's really
our
good.
compost, of course, is made out of biosolids as a feedstock along with wood waste. It's composted for 30 days and at high temperatures, and then cured for a longer period of time to ensure it's stable.
And Mike, is
What-
sorry to cut you off, is every batch tested then?
Yes, yeah, it has to be.
Yeah.
It's you take your bulk volume, which might be 500 yards. You have to sample it from seven different locations within the pile. You can't just have a positive or one representative sample from one area. And then we store the results. We hand them out to the public when they ask to see what we have. The Ministry of Environment comes by and ensures that we have temperatures. It's all on our SCADA system, so it's monitored, tracked, and we have a record of the temperatures of the composting piles going back 10 years.
That's
And
real.
if we don't maintain
Sorry to cut you
temperature
off.
above
I don't know if we
55 degrees,
Yeah.
you have to
Let's go into the weeds.
start over again.
But I do have two questions from the directors, if that's okay.
Yep.
I'll pass it over to Director Moore, and I think she had her hand up first.
Oh, sorry, my hand was up because I'm still having a lot of trouble hearing. I heard Mike just fine, but anyone who's in the building, I'm not hearing. So I'm probably just going to head down there for the next meetings. But
Yeah,
it was just the volume is still not good for folks who are in the boardroom. Thanks.
we'll speak closer to our mics. And Director Cole Hamilton?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Frisch. I'm familiar with the product and I know that it is safe for food products, but while it can be used for any purpose, I know there's a certain kind of ick factor that people associate with it, perhaps not understandably. So, I mean, the recommendation that it makes sense that municipalities make use of it for non-food ornamental type purposes, that allows more of the, the organic compost to be available for people who are growing food products. And I was thinking if we are going to, there's a recommendation to send a letter to the municipalities, and it might be useful to include, sorry about the sneeze, just a regular, just hay fever, that's all. And that letter include as much information as possible about the fact it's Class A, the level of testing Mr. Emery was going into, like just to ensure that staff there have a clear understanding that it's a safe product. So at any point, I'm happy to move the recommendation when we're at that point.
Okay, thank you. And Director Grant?
Yeah, so I know our former Parks guy, Al Fraser, wasn't a huge fan of this. Tried it, didn't find it was very good. I know nothing about fertilizer and don't pretend to. I know our new guy has some trepidation about it too, but to me, this kind of smacks of micromanaging. Like, we don't go and tell our public works guys what kind of shovels to buy. And, it's fine. They know this product's here. If you want to send them a letter that tells them what's in it. But I don't want to get into micromanaging our parks department and telling them what kind of fertilizers and things they should be buying. So I'd prefer to let them decide.
Fair enough. And I think it would be more of an incentive or a recommendation, not necessarily telling them what to do, but understood. And would there be any other avenue to send this through? Would there be a technical committee that might discuss this at an interjurisdictional level?
What we would propose to do is, if the board or the commission adopts this resolution, would be to write a letter to provide the background and then to offer a tour of the facility so that they can talk firsthand. Though your staff can talk firsthand with our staff as to how it's processed and such. There's no question that there is advantages to us. We want to get rid of the product. We want it to be used for a good purpose. So the more customers we have, the better.
And there's a cost to that, obviously, to people buying it?
Yes, but it's very affordable.
It's very quite the salesman. All right. So I believe we're on receipt. Does anyone? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Director
Sorry,
Smith.
I think my question is probably to Mike. I think one of the concerns over the years, Mike, has been pharmaceuticals. Can you speak to that?
There's been a lot of research done on the amount of pharmaceuticals that are in Class A compost derived from biosolids. There really isn't anything concrete to determine that it's a harm or a level elevated enough that it gets carried through the plants. What I've gone through with research and then having a consultant who's been done a lot of work, and he's going through with the United States all their research through the Compost Council. is it's similar to the amount of pharmaceuticals in effluent, but with compost, his rule of thumb is, and in order to absorb enough pharmaceuticals out of working with it with your bare hands, if you worked with it for 100 years, you would have absorbed the equivalent of one Advil.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on receipt? And not seeing anyone, is anyone opposed to receipt? I see Director Morin. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that it's my understanding that farmers and others use Skyrocket for vegetables, and charities sell it to people who are who are selling it for those purposes. So I think it's already, the use is already there.
Yeah, and it just might be that stigma that's attached to it. So are there any more questions or comments on receipt? Is anyone opposed to receipt? Oh.
I was just getting ready to move the recommendation.
Fair enough. I don't see anyone opposed to receipt, and you can speak up now if you are. That's received unanimously. And we have the requested action. If you want to go ahead with it, you're welcome to read it. Move it.
Thank you, Chair. I think given this is just providing information to the municipalities, it's not requiring anyone to do anything. It's just trying to destigmatize a very useful local product that seems, and it's obviously something the CBRD is interested in selling. So for that reason, I will move the recommendation. I don't actually have the text of it up. I'll just flip over to that.
Second.
So the requested action, it used to be that Jake would read these, but she'll.
Yeah, go ahead. Just
Okay, all right. Tossed in there. That the Comox Valley Sewage Commission write to the municipalities of Comox, Courtenay, and Cumberland to encourage their use of Skyrocket compost for use in their ornamental plantings such as flower beds, shrubs, and trees.
And that was seconded by Director Morin. And are there any last questions or comments on this motion? And I don't see any, so I'll call the question. Director Morin,
In favor.
Director Grant,
Opposed.
Director Hamilton,
In favor?
Director Swift,
In favor.
and Commissioner Lieutenant Colonel Gerard.
In favor.
I'm in favor, so that passes. And we'll move all the way down to the in camera, and its the motion is that we move to go in camera pursuant to subsection 90 1K, which is negotiations and related discussions respecting a regional district service.
Move.
Second.
And if there are no questions or comments, I will move on to the call the question. Director Morin,
In favor.
Director Grant, Director Cole Hamilton,
In favor?
Director Swift,
In favor.
and Commissioner Lieutenant Colonel Gerard.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. That's unanimous. Thanks. And thanks very much for anyone who's watching.